The other thing that I would suggest, and now you can see me, so sorry, I didn't realize you guys couldn't see my face. The other thing that I would definitely suggest in terms of some advice for task one is to really think about the fact that the edTPA, even though it's an exam, the elements of it is all around successful teaching. And so if you're really thinking about the ways in which you're educating the students in front of you, and you're keeping at the forefront of your mind what is really important for a successful lesson, then everything will fall into place. So the first thing you have to make sure you do is really think about the things that you know are important in a lesson, regardless if it's for an exam or if it's just for your day-to-day instruction. Once you have that at the forefront of your mind, the other thing that you want to really think about is a topic. So your edTPA topic has to be something you are very comfortable with. And the reason is because you're tasked with writing and doing a lot of writing about a subject that you need to know the ins and out of. You need to know about how you're going to make sure students are successful or able to achieve those objectives. And if the topic is not something that you are comfortable with, you're really going to struggle with being able to do so. So please, 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 if there's one thing that you can take away from here, don't choose a lesson topic that you are not comfortable enough with that you can't explain it to someone else. The other thing is keep in mind that you need to plan your lessons for all learners in your class. And so this means that the students who are struggling learners, the students who are somewhere in between, and then your students who you would say are the learners who need some extension activities. So you want to think about all of those learners in your classroom and plan for them as well. The other thing is to be extremely, and I'll say it again very slowly, extremely specific so that the grader can visualize your lesson. We have to keep in mind that the rater does not know you. They don't know your intentions. They also don't know your level of expertise. And so this exam is your chance to show that to a person who's not very familiar with you or your lesson or your content or your school. And so the only way to ensure that the rater has a clear visual of what's happening in your classroom and the way that you planned is to get everything on paper. And while it is extremely annoying and what you'll find is extremely repetitive, it's really important to make sure that you have crossed all your T's, dotted all of your I's, so that this person is not making any assumptions. The number one thing is that you have to control the narrative. And if you are not specific, then you leave it up to interpretation for someone who may not understand what you're trying to do and where you're going. So don't be vague, be very specific. Some of the advice for task 2 is make sure that you record more than you need. Rule of thumb is to record at least 2 learning segments, just because it's way easier to choose your 15 to 20 minutes clipped if you have more than if you only recorded 20 minutes and it's not the best recording. So always try to record more than you need, which I would say is between 2, the minimum 2 learning segments, and 3 if you have time, space, and the opportunity to record 3 lessons. The other thing is that once you have the 2 lesson learning segments recorded, you want to think about the best slice of your lesson. And so what that means is that you want to find a clip or 2 that show some direct instruction as well as some student interactions in small groups. And we know that there are moments in the lesson where you're going to be interacting with students and doing some direct instruction, but there are also going to be spaces where there should be spaces where students have an opportunity to work with each other and to engage in some, even if it's an independent activity that is connected to what you were instructing in terms of modeling or some guided practice. So you want to think about that. Task 3. Task 3 is all around your assessment. So if you didn't know that, task 3 is basically an analysis of the student work. You want to choose the right assessment. And the right assessment is an assessment that is directly connected to your central focus or your learning objective. And I'll give an example. So if your assessment is simply a multiple choice, then that's not really enough information if your objective was around text analysis, because you want to also have enough information and be able to analyze the student ability to pull out information in the text, to annotate a text, to even maybe write a little bit in a written response. So you want to be really intentional about, one, the assessment you choose, but two, what information will you be able to get from the assessment so that you have enough to write about? Because you need to make sure that you have enough to write about. If you don't, it's really hard to just make up information and connect something to your central focus if it really wasn't created that way. And the other thing is you have to answer a lot of whys. Your assessment analysis has to really provide an opportunity for the rater to understand the why behind everything and what does it mean. So the same way, if you're thinking about a literacy example for a lesson and you want students to analyze, you're going to ask a lot of like why and what does that mean. That's the way you should write your analysis for your assessment, where you're really providing an opportunity for the rater to tap into what you're seeing, and even being honest about the fact if your assessment doesn't provide enough information for you. You have to make sure that you have enough to talk about your student understanding. So those are things I gave you a lot, I think. And I'm sure that many of you may have some questions, but if we're thinking about some general advice along the lines of tasks 1, 2 to 3, those are the things that I would say that are the most important.